Hi everybody, my name is Blue Phoenix. Some people like to call me Eric. The topic of this week's video is amatonormativity and why it's so dangerous. So first let me explain what amatonormativity is. It was a term coined by Elizabeth Brake, professor of philosophy I believe, in a book she wrote called Minimizing Marriage. I haven't read the book myself, but I've seen this term quoted in several blogs and such exactly the same way. So I think this is what it is. So basically, amatonormativity is the assumption that a central, exclusive, amorous relationship is normal for humans, and that it is universally shared goal, and that such a relationship is normative in a sense that it should be aimed at in preference to other relationship types. Or to paraphrase, amatonormativity is that it's normal to desire a romantic relationship, and if you don't, there must be something wrong with you or you're broken, one of the two. So it's something we've all experienced either consciously or subconsciously around us, and it manifests in a lot of different ways. First, the media tends to give a lot of attention to romance, romantic couples. Either they got married or they broke up. If they talk about single people ever, it's usually in the context of, hey, this person is eligible. They'd make a great husband or wife to somebody if they would just couple up with somebody. Another way it manifests is when a couple breaks up, we usually assume that it's a sad thing, even though one or both partners are now happier even now that they're single. Conversely, when a couple gets together, we assume that it's a good thing, even though one or both partners may actually be worse off now that they're in the partnership. Single people are often ridiculed for their single status. Single people are often considered as losers, especially in high school. That's a very tender age, very sensitive age, where we're trying to form who we are, and we got people around us telling us we're losers because we're single. People who have a whole lot of romantic success, they're considered winners. Single people are often pitied. Some of them are single, some coupled, find it very difficult to believe that a single person can truly be happy and complete. And finally, friends of single people try to pressure them into romantic relationships. So these are just some of the ways that amatonormativity manifests itself in our daily lives. So there's a pretty good chance that all of us, myself included, have contributed to amatonormativity, either consciously or subconsciously. But it's dangerous for a lot of different reasons. Amatonormativity can cause self-doubt in a person who is happily single, and that can actually end up leading to depression, or rather they think they're not happy. It can lead to discrimination against single people. There's a book called Singled Out by Bella DePaulo, and she coins this term called singleism, which is a discrimination against single people. It's a real thing, and she provides data to back it up in her book. Single people may be led to believe that their happiness is fake somehow, that they can't really be happy and complete person until they're in a romantic relationship. Amatonormativity can cause pressure to enter an unwanted romantic relationship. Somebody thinks that it's better to be in a bad or a crappy romantic relationship than it would be to be single and still be a loser. It can get worse that an unwanted romantic relationship can end up in a marriage where both people aren't in that for the same reason, or they're not actually into the marriage, which can be a much worse situation to be in. And another reason that amatonormativity is dangerous is it causes confusion in people who are happy without a romantic relationship, or they just don't desire one. So if you've never felt like you want it, but everybody's telling you that you should want it, then it's a kind of a convincing thing to tell you that, oh, yeah, they must be right, I actually should want it. So I'm going to draw, yet again, I like to use ridiculous analogies, but that's what we have to do to help people who are into romance understand these things. So imagine a world where instead of the main topic of interest being romance, it was actually algae. Everybody is obsessed with algae. They talk about it all the time, about how algae are just so cool. And you're one of those people who just don't care about algae. One of the very rare few people that just don't care about algae. People know, they just have this obvious indication that you aren't into algae, much in the way that if you're single, it's obvious to people that you're not in a romance. Let's assume in this analogy that your lack of algae interest is apparent to everybody. So people, they will pity you and they try to offer their comfort even though you're perfectly happy not studying algae. And a lot of the times you kind of feel like an outsider because everybody's talking about algae and you just don't feel like you can relate to their conversation. You're perfectly happy ignoring algae, but you always wondered if maybe if you started studying algae, you would somehow be happier or more complete. You might start to dabble in it, but it just never really catches on for you. You never really feel that spark that makes you want to study algae more. Often your friends and family will try to push the latest book about algae onto you. They'll say, oh, you really got to read this one. I know you didn't like all the other books about algae, but you'll love this one. And you might even participate. You might say, okay, fine, I'll read this book about algae just to try to fit in. But really, you're just lying to yourself underneath. Maybe you go on the path of, you know what, I'm going to go whole hog into this. I'm going to get a PhD in algaeology. Then maybe I'll actually like it. So you get your PhD and then you start teaching algae as an algae professor. Deep down inside though, you never really felt like it was a fit for you, and you waste your life away just teaching algae to others. Supposedly it was going to make you happier, but you never really did feel fulfilled teaching about algae, and you waste your entire life away teaching algae to those around you, even though you just never really were passionate about it. Maybe if you had taken that time to be a singer or a painter or an accountant or an engineer, you might have had a more fulfilled life, but instead you spent it all just teaching algae instead. So in that example, you're just not interested in algae. In much the same way, a lot of people aren't interested in romance. So amatonormativity is kind of like this overwhelming pressure to learn about algae, even though you're just not interested in it. And so you can see that for somebody who just isn't into romantic relationships or they're perfectly happy single, hearing this overwhelming pressure all the time can be very toxic. So how can we put a stop to amatonormativity? The first step is realizing that it's happening. To realize that you are making those assumptions or that people around you are making assumptions. For example, a friend breaks up, you just hear the news that a friend of yours broke up, and you instantly believe that to be a sad thing before you even talk to them. Well, maybe they're perfectly happy or they're better off now that they're broken up from this person. Once you start to realize that you're making these assumptions, you can start to be more sensitive to what people around you actually want. Maybe they're perfectly happy being single, and maybe they don't want you to set them up on a date. So if your single friends are happy, try this. Encourage them to stay single. Huh, that would be an original thought. Honestly, I have very few people that would tell me, yeah, okay, stay single, that's awesome. It just doesn't happen that much. And this one's really important, is stop pitying single people. We don't want your pity. If you talk to somebody and they really are lonely and sad and they want a romantic partner, okay, fine, you can step in and try to be that matchmaker for them. But don't just assume that they must be sad because they're single. They might be perfectly fine. And also, we shouldn't believe that a bad romance is somehow better than being single. That's not universally true. A lot of people would just be better off being on their own than being in a relationship that they don't want to be in the first place. So, because it's so prevalent, amatonormativity is so prevalent, and we all grow up around it, it's easy for us to be kind of numb to it. But to realize that it's there and realize that, maybe this isn't right. Maybe it's not good to be making these assumptions and pushing people into relationships they don't want. So I hope that makes sense to you, whether you're romantic or not romantic, whether you desire relationships or not, you're happily single, maybe not. It's good to understand that this is here and it's a prevalent thing, and it needs to be stopped. We need to stop making all these assumptions and stop pushing them on people. So hopefully I haven't rambled too much. My guest today is the birds in the tree. I hope you enjoyed listening to them chirping. And it's nice weather again in Kentucky. The humidity's finally gone away a bit, and it's pretty pleasant out here today. It's actually pretty nice. So hope you found that helpful, and I will catch you next time.